Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel. In this short video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous night of the local time. First we're going to start with Robotyne area, where the Ukrainians during the previous few days tried to attack the Russian positions in the vicinity of Robotyne and Novoprokopovka. To be more precise, the Ukrainians made a lot of attempts to penetrate the Russian defense belt and to enter the city from the north. And this very interesting area, very interesting updates are coming from this territory. And for example, today we got at least few geolocations. The first geolocation took place inside of Robotyne. The Russian sources are saying that on this video we can see the Krasnopol hit, and as a result of Krasnopol hit, the Russians managed to destroy the Ukrainian armored vehicle that was located inside the city. Another interesting video came a little bit from the southeast from this area. Another Ukrainian tank was moving along the trenches, along the forest lines in direction of Russian positions to the south. The Russians controlled the situation, and as a result, very important, of anti-tank strike, not like with Lancet strike, not artillery strike, but as a result of anti-tank missile strike, another Ukrainian tank was destroyed. And what is so important from these two videos, and the thing is that this is not the first armored vehicle, heavy armored vehicle, that was destroyed on this direction. If you remember, just yesterday we discussed the video of Ukrainian Leopard in the same area. Two Ukrainian tanks were heading from Robotyne to Novoprokopovka. And as a result of getting on minefields, or as a result of artillery strike, very difficult to understand. I believe that was a minefield. The Ukrainian Leopard was destroyed. So for 2 days, 3 armored vehicles, 3 heavy Ukrainian armored vehicles were destroyed. So the question is how the Ukrainians managed to concentrate such a significant number of armored vehicles on the south of Robotyne. How the Ukrainians managed to bypass a lot of square kilometers from Orikhiv, a lot of kilometers from Orikhiv to Robotyne, and not being destroyed as a result of Russian Lancet strike. Because if we went talking about June, July, August, we couldn't even imagine this progress for Ukrainian forces of armored vehicles. Most of the Ukrainian tanks were destroyed a little bit to the north of Robotyne. And the thing is that the Russians also, as the Ukrainians as well, are limited in their resources, and they're limited in their FPV drone forces, in their Lancet forces, and so on. And the Russians, before all these events in Robotyne, were forced to redeploy most of their experienced and powerful forces to Avdiivka direction for Avdiivka storming operation, which of course led to, let's say, reduce the Russian power, their defense power in this area. And the Ukrainians took a decision to use this benefit, this advantage, and they started attacking the Russian forces with tanks. And currently the Ukrainians will continue their offensive operation inside the city. And but the Ukrainians also limited, because they also were forced to redeploy some forces from Robotyne strategical reserves to Avdiivka. But now, at least now, the Ukrainians have possibilities to send armored vehicles to the south. The Russians continue attacking the Ukrainian forces in this area. In the vicinity of Verbova, the Ukrainians made no attempts to storm the city. Currently, the Ukrainians try to use Verbova just for concentration of their light, like infantry troopers without armored vehicles. And the main purpose of this defense belt is not to allow the Russians to attack the Ukrainian forces in Robotyne into the flank. So this is the main purpose. The Ukrainians don't have possibilities to attack, but because of the fact that the trenches, as you can see in this area, are not so deep, and there are not so many like shelters in this area, the Russians use this situation to attack the Ukrainians with FPV drones. On this video we can see a series of Russian attacks against the Ukrainian infantry with FPV drones, and the video is very long, up to 5 minutes, and I have calculated the number of losses, and the Ukrainians just for 5 minutes video lost around 50 soldiers killed and wounded. So it's a very difficult and complicated situation, and if the situation is going to continue to develop the same way, the Ukrainians don't have chances to control this territory. Furthermore, very interesting video and pictures we got from the same area. The picture I'm talking about. On this screen you can see Lancet strike, but the most important part from this picture is that the Russians has equipped and upgraded Lancet with night vision equipment. And currently the Russians do have possibilities to attack the Ukrainians not just during the daylight, but also during the night, or during the because autumn and winter are coming. The day is going to be very short, and night is going to be very long. So that's why the Russians have prepared themselves before winter period of time, and they will continue attacking and destroying the Ukrainian armored vehicles, infantry and artillery systems with Lancet strikes deep inside of rare Ukrainian territory, and they are going to continue to be very successful. On this video we can see another light car that the Ukrainians were using to support their forces in Robotyne, and as a result of FPV drone strike another Ukrainian machine was destroyed. So the situation in Zaporizhia area remains to be complicated, so we'll see what is going to be next. The Ukrainians from their side published the video how they managed to discover the Russian ammo depot somewhere in the vicinity of Novoprakovka. And as a result of dropping the bomb, the Russian ammo depot was destroyed with a very heavy explosion. Now we're moving further to Vremivka tactical bridgehead. We have no changes in this area. The Russians continue bombing the Ukrainian forces in Staromayorsk and Robotyne. And the interesting video we got from Staromayorsk. In this video we can see the usage of the heavy Russian mortar system with 240mm rounds. And explosion, as you can see from the usage of this mortar system, is almost the same as the usage of FA-500, so very heavy explosion. And furthermore, the Russians are using, as we discussed in the previous videos, new type of rounds by the name of Smelchak. These are accurate type of rounds of 240mm, and this type of mortar the Russians use for like destroying, and not just destroying but reducing till dust the Ukrainian fortifications. Very powerful weapon. Furthermore, the Russians published very funny video on the north of Pryutin. The Russians showing the at least just a second. The Russians shown us the result of Ukrainian offensive operation somewhere in the north. On this video, we can see how a very big Ukrainian squad, a group of 20 up to 20 few dozens of Ukrainian soldiers, stormtroopers, were heading in direction of Russian trenches to attack, maybe to force the Russians to step back. And few moments later, we see the video of 4 Ukrainian soldiers who managed to survive and who was running away from the combat line. Now we are moving to Avdiivka direction, and during the night we haven't received anything from this area. At least from Avdiivka, the Russians are saying that there are still very heavy artillery duels, that the Russians were during the previous night were digging in deeper on the captured territories and so on. But a lot of updates are coming from Marinka direction. The Russians continue bombing and attacking the Ukrainian edge positions in this area, and probably we're going to see some intensifying of actions in this direction as well. Another FPV drone strike against the Ukrainian trenches in this area. And what is so important about these videos, and the thing is that if we increase the number of updates from Marinka area, let's say since the 1st of October, we're gonna see that the Russians are pretty focused in this area. During the previous months, during October, there were a lot of FPV drone strikes, a lot of artillery strikes, and we see that it reminds us some kind of artillery and FPV drone preparation before the next offense, before the next attempt to attack further to the west in Marinka direction. During the October months, the Russians managed to capture the tree line on the north and the small farm that located also on the northern edge position of Marinka. And furthermore, there were a lot of clashes for these tree lines between coal mine and the northern part of Marinka, but the Russians weren't so successful in those operations. Anyway, we see that the Russians continue creation of the foothold before the next offensive operation in direction of Krasnogorovka. So if the Russians want to complete the battle for Krasnogorovka and Marinka successfully, first of all, they need to establish control over this territory. And this is exactly what they're trying to do right now. Just to maintain the foothold, maintain the combat line, maintain the gray zone, and to force the Ukrainians to step back from the northern Marinka fortification. This will allow the Russians to, let's say, to start offensive somewhere to the north in direction of these lakes and water reservoirs that located on the south of Krasnogorovka. So this is the events that took place in the vicinity of Marinka. When talking about Bakhmut, Artyomovsk direction, we haven't received anything from this area, just few FPV drone strikes in the vicinity of Sporne. The Russians continue attacking the Ukrainian trenches, and also if we increase the number of updates since the beginning of October, we see a very big Russian focus on just 2 FPV drones counter strikes from the Ukrainian side, which also confirms that the Russians do have some plans to attack this territory from at least 3 sides. The battle for Sporne last since the beginning of autumn of the previous year, so about a year, just for 2-3 buildings. This is a very powerful Ukrainian stronghold, and the Russians need to capture this stronghold if they want to proceed their offensive operation further in the direction of Siversk. Very interesting geolocation we got from the Ukrainian side on the Siversk River. On this video we can see how the Ukrainians managed to discover the Russian infantry, and as a result of FPV drone strike they attacked the Russians who were trying to hide in the shelters in the Siversk River. So we see that these positions located very close to the city by the name of Bilogorovka, and the Russians are getting closer and closer to the Siversk River, and there are very high chances that even this year maybe we're gonna see some crossing the river operation and attempts of the Russian forces to encircle the Ukrainians in Bilogorovka. More important updates are coming from Kupyansk direction, to be more precise from the city by the village by the name of Ivanovka. Yes, the Ukrainians published the video how they managed to discover at night period of time the Russian sabotage group who was moving along the tree lines, along the forest, and as a result of artillery strike, the Russian forces were damaged and were forced to step back and probably to retreat or something like this. But the most important part from this video we will see at the end, just when the camera will turn from the night vision mode to the default mode. Just a second, we're gonna see this in the end of the video. So as you can see just a second ago, this is the video. So the Russians, according to this video, was moving from the northern part to the southern part. So basically, at least on the 22nd of October, as a result of clashes that took place during the previous days, the Russians managed to establish full control over this red line. And the Russians managed to complete the concentration of forces right in front of the village by the name of Ivanovka. And the distance between the Russian edge positions and village itself is around less than 1 kilometer. So everything is ready to start offensive operation in this area. Furthermore, if we increase the number of updates since the 1st of October, we see that the Russians were pretty effective, but during this month, during October, the Russians have just complete the concentration of forces along this red line. So there were no clashes on the left side of this red line, just the clashes and icons on the red line, which means that this is the progress of the Russians during October, and just less than 1 kilometer to Ivanovka, and I expect another storming operation in the city within the next maybe even 48 hours. And that's it for this short video. Military Summary channel reminds to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching, subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.